This might be one of the latest reviews for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 to come out. But hey, better late than never. Anyway, let's all fly away together into the forever and beautiful sky and talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So this is it, the final installment in James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy franchise before he heads on over to DC. This time, the Guardians journey across the galaxy in order to save the life of Rocket Raccoon, who has been injured by Adam Warlock. Finally, after 6 years, we get to see Adam Warlock on screen, played by Will Poulter. But more on that later. The Guardians this time include Kraglin and Cosmo the Space Dog. Now, being honest, Marvel has been on a bit of a downtrend ever since Avengers Endgame. And this is because they've had to pay off the character arcs that have been put in place before that in Phase 4, as well as building up to Phase 5 and the Multiverse Saga. While they've had hits like Loki, WandaVision, the Spider-Man movies, and Black Panther Wakanda Forever, in my opinion, they have had a few stinkers. For example, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Thor Love and Thunder, and even recent Ant-Man movie it's kind of meh. The problem with this is there have been big expectations for these tentpole characters like Doctor Strange and Thor, and also in Ant-Man the debut for Kang the Conqueror. The problem with these recent MCU movies is that it's felt a bit too samey, it's felt a bit too formulaic. They're all, Doctor Strange, Thor, and Ant-Man are all zany space adventures. Basically, Doctor Strange in the multiverse, or three universes, Thor across space, and Ant-Man in the quantum realm. So it's felt too samey, and that can get a little bit boring. But I think the biggest problem, the biggest offender, is that they've lent too hard into comedy. In a good movie, especially a good MCU movie, treads the line between comedy and drama, and I feel like, especially with Thor Love and Thunder, they lent too hard into the comedy. Wherever they have an opportunity to make a joke, they will make a joke, and that undercuts any of the drama that is happening on screen. Even in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, you had comedy where there just didn't need to be comedy, and if you cut that out entirely, it is a much better film. The reason for this is because I feel like they're trying to take what worked in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, the DNA of it, and sort of implant it into these other Marvel properties, and I don't think that's a good idea, because none of these characters are inherently comedic characters. Doctor Strange is not an inherently comedic character, and neither is Thor. Yes, Thor Ragnarok worked because it had some comedy, but it managed to thread the line between action, drama, and comedy perfectly. But I think Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Thor Love and Thunder, and Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania kind of failed to do that. I think if they had focused more on the character drama, then it would have been much, much better received. Not every scene is an excuse for a quip or a joke, and if you do that, it kind of drowns out the stakes and makes everything feel a lot lesser. And that's where I think Guardians of the Galaxy 3 manages to shine. It almost manages to thread the line between drama and comedy. With James Gunn writing and directing the movie, it manages to just stay on that line, mostly because of Rocket's backstory, which serves to ground the entire movie. And in that backstory, it is played straight, it is never played for laughs, there is a focus on the character drama. Meanwhile, most of the comedy in the movie is brought by the other Guardians. One of the complaints I've seen online and in other reviews is that they spend a lot of time bickering, but I feel that works for the Guardians of the Galaxy because they're kind of a dysfunctional found family. And they will have their differences and they will bicker. So when they start bickering or quipping, it doesn't feel out of place because that is what we've come to expect from them as a group, and that's why we love them. That's why we love these characters. Now, in order to save Rocket Raccoon, the Guardians have to find his creator, the High Evolutionary, played by Chukwudi Iwuji, who some may recognize from Peacemaker. And he gives out one of the most standout performances of a villain in a while. He manages to convey just how cruel the High Evolutionary is and how deranged he becomes as the movie goes on. The High Evolutionary is someone with a god complex. He's created societies. And so when his intelligence, when his perceived intelligence is challenged by a lesser being, he starts losing it. Now, some people may not like that he goes from this menacing villain to someone who is completely insane and just shouty, but that's what happens when you have your ego bruised, and he has a massive ego. So when he has his ego bruised by Rocket's intelligence, something he created that is now seemingly smarter than him, he loses all composure and goes completely off a cliff. Now, on the other hand, we have the Warlock in the room. For 6 years, fans have waited to see Adam Warlock on the big screen. Now, some people even suspected that he may show up in Avengers Endgame, which is, of course, he didn't. And he is regarded as one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel universe, or at least in the comics. But here he is powerful, for sure, and that introduction to him establishes just how powerful he is. But after that, he's there. He's in the movie. He does stuff. And this is why I said it almost toes the line between comedy and drama, because he's played for laughs. Adam Warlock is played for laughs, and I know a lot of people do not like that. And this is another big issue which Marvel is facing, is where they waste characters. For example, Taskmaster in Black Widow, the Scarlet Witch in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Gore the God Butcher in Thor Love and Thunder, MODOK in Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, and now Adam Warlock. And all these characters feel a little bit wasted. Now, I know that both Taskmaster and probably Adam Warlock will be making a return in future MCU films, and some may see his sort of comedic, childish persona as a personality which has room for improvement. But for me, when you've waited so long to see a character on screen, you want to see a nearly fully developed character with a good character arc. And honestly, for the most part, he's just there. He's just there in the movie. It feels like James Gunn completely forgot about him and then was reminded, like, hey, we've got to include Adam Warlock in this, so yeah, just write something for him. It's a disappointment with how they've handled this character, and this is not a problem with Will Poulter. I think he does what he can with what he's been given, but it'll go down as another waste. And hopefully going forward in future movies, we get a better version, a more improved, a more grown version of Adam Warlock. The movie also brings back Gamora, but this is a Gamora from an alternate timeline after this Gamora died in Infinity War. Spoiler alert for anybody who has not watched Infinity War, and then they probably shouldn't be watching this movie. But I think they handled her relationship with Star-Lord pretty well. And also each of the other Guardians have a little bit of a mini arc of their own. Mantis has her own arc, so does Drax. Nebula, who's one of the best characters in this movie, as well as Kraglin and Cosmo the Space Dog. They have their own little character arc. It's not really that important, it's not really that deep, but it's fun to see that each of them gets their own little journeys to go through. And comparing this movie to Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I feel like this movie is a lot less disjointed. I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was kind of all over the place. This is a bit more focused. The Guardians are more together. And so we, as the audience, are not left confused about who's where and what's what. It's pretty straightforward. It's go here, get that, but it is done well. All in all, I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is a fitting conclusion to the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, especially that directed by James Gunn. I think the backstory of Rocket Raccoon really grounds the film and gives it an element of depth that previous Marvel films in these past two phases, especially tentpole films, have not had. And it is a fitting finale for now for the Guardians. So I give Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 an 8 out of 10. Anyway, have you seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you again in the next video.